Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
I like to say I think my dad's the best governor Arkansas has ever had, one of the best governors the country has ever seen, and I'm hoping to take that title away from him pretty soon.
I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to Capitol View, and thank you for joining us. And welcome to the era of Sarah. Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be sworn in as the 47th governor of the state of Arkansas in January after she won election with 63% of the vote on Tuesday night. With Republican supermajorities in the House and the Senate, she will have a mandate to pass whatever legislation she and the GOP can craft. This week, Governor-elect Sanders celebrated her victory, met with Governor Asa Hutchinson, and announced her transition team that will prepare the leadership for her governorship. Other big victors on election night 2022, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin will be the next Attorney General. Attorney General Leslie Rutledge will be the next Lieutenant Governor. Republicans swept all of the other constitutional offices as well. Right now, 82 of the 100 seats in the Arkansas House and 29 of the 35 seats in the Arkansas Senate are Republican held. And at the federal level, U.S. Senator John Bozeman won a third term in a landslide. And all four incumbent Republican congressmen, Rick Crawford, French Hill, Steve Womack, and Bruce Westerman, were comfortably reelected. Ruby Red Arkansas is Ruby Redder after the 2022 elections. We will dive into the data a little bit later in the show, as well as talk about national politics with Meet the Press moderator Chuck Todd. And there was another big winner on Tuesday night, Little Rock Mayor Frank Scott Jr. He also joins us. We're back after this
Scene in Arkansas.
Well, after an election, there's always a ton of data to pour through. Here are a few highlights that you'll find interesting. 63%. Sarah Sanders' 63% win is the highest first-term open seat percentage in the last several Arkansas governor's races. For some modern perspective, in his first run in 2006, Mike Beebe beat Asa Hutchinson 55 to 41%. In 2014, when the seat was open again, Asa Hutchinson beat Mike Ross 55 to 41%. Beebe and Hutchinson both eclipsed 64% when running for re-election to a second term. The GOP members of the Arkansas House grew from 78 to 82 out of 100, in part by winning newly drawn seats from redistricting, knocking off incumbent Democratic State Representative David Fielding. The number could go to 83 if they win a Conway House seat that's currently held by Democrat Steve McGee. There are only 4 votes separating McGee from GOP challenger Trent Minner, and with military, overseas, and provisional ballots still to be considered. Republicans control 29 of the 35 seats in the Arkansas State Senate. They picked up the independent seat of Senator Jim Hendren, a former Republican, and a new seat in Northwest Arkansas that was created by the dissolution of a South Arkansas seat held by retiring Democratic Senator Larry Teague. Your top vote getter of the night, Commissioner of State Lands Tommy Land, who received over 607,000 votes, just edging out second-place vote getter Tim Griffin with 602,000 votes. There were just over 906,000 votes cast in Arkansas in this midterm election, and there are about 1.8 million registered voters in the state, so that's about a 50% voter participation rate. And I say, come on, Arkansas, you can do better than that. We can get that number up higher. When we come back, Chuck Todd, moderator of Meet the Press, joins me to discuss what remains at the national level. And later, Little Rock Mayor Frank Scott Jr., he won by a solid margin, but does he have a mandate?
On the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to the program. Joining me now, Chuck Todd. He is the moderator for Meet the Press. Chuck, good to have you with us. Thanks for making time during a busy week. Let's begin with
Happy to do so, Roby. Thank you.
Let's do our takeaways. Your takeaway from election night in terms of what happened nationally. Republicans expecting that big red wave. It did not come. Why do you think expectations did not meet reality?
Well, I think expectations just got out of hand because I think people saw the polls they wanted to see rather than sort of seeing what we do here at NBC News, which is don't just look right, don't just look left, sort of look everywhere here. And there were 2 competing forces in these midterms that we were looking to see what was going to matter more. Certainly historical and fundamentals were on the side of the Republicans here, which is why many read what when they saw a Republican lead said, oh, this is going to grow, because that's what happens in off-year midterm elections. But this was also the first time we had a midterm election where the out party didn't claim they were sort of a new and improved party from the last time you saw them on the ballot. In fact, it was sort of the same party, right, because of the presence of Donald Trump. So I do think it was the question of, was polarization going to trump the fundamentals? And I think that's exactly what happened, is that you have a Democratic coalition that when Donald Trump is out there and Donald Trump candidates are out there, it fires up an extra portion of the Democratic base to show up. And it didn't necessarily, there seems to be a slice of right-leaning independents who are just not going to vote for these Trump candidates. And we saw it, there's a specific group in the exit poll that shows this. 10% of the population, when we ask a four-part question about Biden's job rating, strongly approve, somewhat approve, strongly disapprove, somewhat disapprove. 10% of the population showed somewhat disapprove. Those voters, if you were a Republican statewide candidate and you weren't close to Trump, you won a majority of those voters. But every single candidate that was a Trump-endorsed candidate in a primary that was the nominee, they didn't win a majority of those voters. The Democratic candidate did. So they were the swing vote. These are people that are not happy with Biden, but they weren't going to go there. And I think that was what was perhaps missed in some of the polling. But that, I think, is the force in our politics that sort of shows us it's a status quo result. We're moving the numbers a few points, but we're essentially in the same place we were in 2020.
Trump is still strong in Arkansas based on the results that we saw on election night. Let me ask you again nationally, when I look at some of the House races, and it is so much closer than we expected it to be, really 3 states might save the GOP bacon for the majority here. You had a pickup of 4 House seats in Florida, a pickup of 4 House seats in New York, and then you've got this 5 to 10 in California that are still a little bit undecided at this time. Any insight on why those states, which are typically blue states or swing states, seem to have gone GOP?
Look, turnout. Democratic turnout was was not good in the 4 largest states in the country: California, New York, Texas, Florida, and New York. So, and the other thing I would argue, particularly with the New York and California House races, is that in those places, the abortion issue didn't resonate, because nobody in New York believes abortion's going to be illegal in New York. Nobody in California believes it's going to get banned in California. So perhaps the same issue that may have helped a Democratic House candidate in Kansas, the abortion issue didn't necessarily help a New York candidate on that issue. Then you throw in the governance in the cities. New York City, San Francisco, I'd throw Portland, Oregon in there. We're going to see what happens with the Oregon results. But those 3 cities, I think uniquely, what's going on there, it did resonate with suburban voters in California, suburban voters in New York. And so I'd explain. And then, of course, in Florida, that's a different story. That's Ron DeSantis. He said, no, let's make a better map. It may get thrown out by the courts next year, but right now, Ron DeSantis may be the reason why Republicans get a House majority. So talk about the hero of the night for the Republican Party. Not only does he turn Florida into what looks like a very red state now, he may be the sole reason why they pick up the House.
All right, I got to cut it off there. Maybe we'll have a DeSantis, Sarah Huckabee Sanders ticket in 2024. He's Chuck Todd, moderator of Meet the Press. Thank you for being with.
I wouldn't rule it out. I think your governor's a star in the making.
I agree with you that she will be big on the national stage. Chuck Todd, moderator of Meet the Press, thank you so much. Come see us in Arkansas soon.
You got it, Robbie. I will.
You can catch Meet the Press right after us, right here on this channel. We're back with more right after this. And welcome back to the program. I'm Roby Brock. This is Capitol View. I'm joined now by one of the biggest victors on election night, and that is Little Rock Mayor Frank Scott. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Roby.
Just under 50%, I think so. But you know, I mean, it was a big margin of victory there. Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. Just first and foremost, just internally grateful to the residents of Little Rock for electing us to a 2nd term. It truly was a blessing from God for this to happen. We're excited, we're motivated, and we're focused on how we grow forward as a city.
Tough race, and I'll get to a few things that you had to encounter in the course of all that. What do you think was the key to victory? What do you look back at the numbers now, and you kind of had a little bit of time to put some perspective to it? What do you think was the key to victory?
I think the key to victory was, one, clearly the residents of Little Rock. I continue to share with everyone, they are my bosses, and they hold me accountable. And so our team at the City of Little Rock, as well as the campaign team, we just shared the message of the work that we've been doing the past 3.5 years, despite a pandemic, and we wanted to ensure that everyone knew the work we were doing. We continued to communicate throughout our administration on the work that was being done. We believe that resonated with the people of Little Rock, and again, focusing on the positives of the City of Little Rock and how we grow forward, whether it be the 8,000 plus jobs that we have announced over the past 4 years, increasing our population to 203,000, ensuring that everyone knew that Little Rock is one of 2 mid-sized cities that actually grew in the South, being Little Rock and Huntsville. And so that positive message being reinforced of the work that we've been doing the past 3.5 years, we believe that that message resonated with the people of Little Rock, and they wanted to continue to focus on unity, growth, and transformation.
I moderated 3 of the debates that you guys had over the course of this. I was feeling a little bit like the mayor candidate whisperer there for a little while, because I knew all of you pretty well. So, but anyhow, so, what are you going to be focused on in a second term? What do you think you've got clearance to do now?
Well, I think the main focus in the second term is to continue the work that we've been doing, but do some new things. Clearly, we have to focus and collaborate with our city board to ensure that the vision and mission is inclusive, that we focus on unity and growth and transformation for the city. The top priority on my mind right now is hiring our next police chief.
When will we see that?
Here pretty soon.
Here pretty soon. That's a vague answer right there. I need to.
It takes time. Clearly, it takes time.
A month, 2 months before the end of the year.
I just will say soon. Again, we've been spending a lot of time thinking about it, working on it, as you know, because our police chief retired in May of this year, and so we are focused on that. We have a pool of applicants, of course, and we've been going through those applications. And again, it's been a top priority to get that done quick, fast, in a hurry. But we want to make sure that we make the right decision. And so those are the things that are on my mind exactly right now.
Soon. I'm going to have to look up the definition on that one there. You mentioned too about with the city board having more inclusiveness or more inclusion in there. Is that just a lesson you've learned in the first term, or do you think you've got something specific in mind?
In leadership, you can't be a good leader if you can't reflect and look inward and figure out how there are areas of opportunity for improvement. And so one of the things that I want to do is ensure that I improve board relations, because a mayor can't get anything done without 6 votes. I'm grateful that we were able to get a lot done with 6 votes over the past 4 years, but I wouldn't be totally honest with myself if I said that we got it done very easily. There were definitely some challenges. I learned a lot of lessons. I want to make sure that I share that with the members of the city board, that there's been some lessons learned. I look at this next second term as a complete reset. I was talking with one of my members of the board and said, hey, I called about a particular city, talked to them briefly when I ran into them, and basically said, hey, when we get a chance to have some coffee, let's reset. And they said yes. And so I'm excited about that. And again, as a leader, I have to look inward to see what areas that I can do better. And I know that's the area that I want to focus on, is increasing board relations.
I'm not going to dwell on the negative here, but I do want to just kind of go back here. I mean, I'm not sure I've seen a candidate endure as many bad headlines in an election cycle as you did in this election cycle.
Now, Roby, you don't have to tell it all.
Well, the city has been dealing with an escalating crime problem. Certainly homicides are at a level that you would never want to see them. The Lit Fest festival all fell apart there throughout this campaign, and there's this topic of FOI issues here too. Let's talk about crime. Yeah. You advocated during the campaign a long-term holistic approach to solving the crime issue. I think that probably stays on track, if I had to guess. I'm not putting words in your mouth. What do you advocate doing more quickly, though, in the short term? What is something we could do? Obviously, hiring a new police chief would be one of those things, but are there some specific action items that you could do immediately?
Sure. The very specific action items that we can share right now publicly, one is clearly the long-term holistic approach. It continues. Acting Chief of Police Wayne Bewley shared when we experienced our 70th homicide that it's working, it needs to be sustained, and so we're grateful that the people of Little Rock see that this resonating. We're seeing violent crime go down by -6%. Unfortunately, our homicides are a record high, and we know that those homicides have different aspects to it, but it's an area of opportunity that we have to focus on as a priority. But going forward is continue to stand up our recently announced real-time crime center that adds additional eyes on the streets that helps with crime prevention. We want to focus on making sure that our officers have raises and make some pay adjustments. So that's something that we'll be working with the city board in the upcoming budget discussions, where we'll be giving, subject to the city board's approval, pay adjustments to ensure that we remain competitive. The city of Little Rock has always been, from Little Rock Police Department standpoint, has always been competitive and leading the way in salary for our officers. We know recently at the legislature we were surpassed by the Arkansas State Police, and so we'll be making some adjustments to make sure that we're remaining very competitive.
You mentioned the crime center there. I'm not familiar with how that works. What is it that it does that puts more eyeballs on the street and helps, I guess, address things before they escalate?
Sure. When you say additional eyes on the streets, there are additional cameras that you can't know about or where they're located, but it helps us. It does not have any artificial imaging or facial recognition, but it does help us really key on suspects that are out and about that need to be captured. Helps us, if the crime incident actually happens, helps us garner more evidence to capture the respective individuals who've committed that crime. And so it's been very successful. It's only been going for right at a month now, I believe, and we've already had some successful captures and arrests already. And so we think that's going to be very prominent in our holistic approach on how we focus on fighting crime. And so, but in addition to the real-time crime center, of course, we're going to be making pay adjustment and raises for our officers. We want to ensure that they have all the equipment and resources that they have, because we've always fully funded them, but we know we have to do more as we continue to fight crime.
The state legislature comes into session in January. I've got an interview with Senator Bart Hester this weekend where he talks about not adding 1,000 beds to the prison system in Arkansas, but 3,000 beds is what he's suggesting. How much of that will help? Does there need to be some parole reform as well at the state level? Will you be advocating for some state law changes to address crime?
I think we definitely have to address parole reform in the upcoming legislature. Unfortunately, as you know, I'm an associate pastor, and I've spoken a lot and preached a lot at prisons, and I'm very involved in reentry efforts, and clearly a part of our holistic approach is having prevention, intervention, treatment programs as well as reentry. And so quick shout out to Restore Hope and others who are working with the city of Little Rock, with our brothers and sisters that are exiting the system to ensure that they don't revert back. But one of the things that the city of Little Rock experiences is an enormous number of parolees that are paroled to the city of Little Rock who aren't from Little Rock. And so while we know that many times our brothers and sisters are in need of second and third chances, we also know that the city of Little Rock shares a brunt of many of the parolees, it's not reflected in a very equitable fashion across the state. And
so how do you change that?
I think we definitely have to work with the next governor, Governor-elect Sanders, as well as those who are focused on that, to ensure that we have some type of communication about it from that standpoint.
Lit Fest, obviously we referenced earlier, fell apart there right before the election. What would you have done differently about Lit Fest, and will you try it again?
First and foremost, I think Lit Fest, clearly there were some lessons learned, there were some mistakes from that standpoint. When the issues came to my table, we canceled it, and so that's in the past. We want to focus on the present and the future. But one of the things that I definitely know that definitely could have been better communication. wholesale, and so we want to make sure that going forward, when we want to focus on another event of that scale and magnitude, that it's more inclusive, there's more communication as we move forward together with it. And again, we believe it's something that the city needs to really show the best of the city from a cultural standpoint, technology, entrepreneurship, arts and entertainment, and really bring people back to the city of Little Rock for whatever reason why they may have left, to let them know how much we have grown and what we're doing to grow forward. That was the whole point about it. And two, because we know, as you know, we haven't had a Riverfest in many, many years, and many residents are yearning for something of that magnitude. And I think there's some lessons learned on how we'll proceed going forward. And again, the buck stops with me. And as I share with everyone, there's been lessons learned, and when issues arise, we make decisions to ensure that they're corrected.
So it sounds like you'll try something again. It may not be called Lit Fest.
I will say it was a passion of mine to see a festival that brings out the best of our city, to showcase our city not only to ourselves inwardly, but to the external state as well as the nation. And we think that's something that's sorely needed. It doesn't happen overnight, just like Riverfest in its magnitude did not happen overnight. And so it's something that we will definitely love to do. But again, I got to get to January first, and so that's not something that's a top priority. My top priority is hiring our next police chief.
All right, you are going to be testifying in court, I think, in a couple of weeks on some Freedom of Information Act litigation there. What seems to be the problem with being able to get FOI requests met in 3 days? Why can't that be done?
Sure, I can't give all the details. As you know, it's currently under litigation, and so I can't share too much. What I can share is to the public is that the city of Little Rock is inundated with a number of different requests. We've had some staff allocation issues that need to be corrected, and they will be corrected, and just want to continue to focus on that because we want to be and we will be accountable, clear, and transparent, and we'll get it corrected.
All right. He's Mayor Frank Scott of Little Rock. He's got a second term. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. All right. That's all for today's program. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.